Hi folks, Slick Sizes here. Now we've had some behemoths of Russian knives in this high-end collection. Lovely pieces. This one is kind of the opposite. This is from a Polish knife maker. Now I've looked at a few Polish knives over the years. I had a Herman Custom, but I moved that on because I didn't like it. I kind of thought I didn't like the sound of it. The action of it sounded sort of cheap and tinny. To me, I mean, I know other people love them, but I don't. So I moved it on, traded it for a tiny little slip joint. Anyway, this is by another Polish maker. By a Polish designer, whose name is Marcin Slisz. Now that's probably not how you pronounce it, because if there's one thing I know about Polish pronunciation, is whatever it says, that isn't how it's pronounced. I have a few Polish friends, and I've been there a couple of times, and you look at some of the places and names and people's names and whatever, and they tell you the name, and you see it written down, and they don't really bear much resemblance often. So I've probably got his pronunciation completely wrong. But this was designed by Marcin Slisz back in 2012. The first collaboration that he did with Spyderco was called the Techno, which was a small but chunky knife with a 4.5mm thick blade. So it was quite a thick blade for such a small knife. He went on to do the Slisz Bowie and then the Spidey Chef. I think, as far as I'm aware, they're the only collaborations that he'd done. But the Techno always proved popular, but it had done its time and sold out, and so on. So he was asked to sort of do an update version, and this is the update. This is the Techno 2. As I say, it's got a slightly slimmer blade. It's still quite chunky. It's 3.5mm thick. It's no Slim Jim, but it's not the 4.5mm that it was. They've changed the blade grind from a full flat grind to more of a sort of saber grind to give it more strength in the back of the blade. Not that I think it really needs it. It's given a little bit of a swedge, which I think is more for aesthetics than for anything else, because it doesn't come to the point, so it doesn't aid the point in any particular way. They describe this as a sheep's foot. Okay, if they want to describe it as a sheep's foot, I think it's if it's sort of a traditional shape, I would assume it's more of a Warncliffe, but nonetheless, I suppose there's a couple of corners here, but I think it kind of looks like it curves from the top. Of course, what's wrong for all of those things is that it's a curved blade, and sheepsfoot and Warncliffes and whatever. One of the key things is that they have a straight blade. Maybe this is coming into the sort of modern cleaver style. Now, both the original knife and this one were made in CTS XHP steel, which, if it was being made today, is probably an odd choice, but it's a good stainless steel. It works. Obviously, it has the Spyderco styling in the hole opening. You've got a bead-blasted titanium handle, and you'll see the cutouts here to reverse the clip, but we'll see in a minute. It doesn't really work as a left-handed knife. It really is a right-handed knife. One of the style features that they put in here is a reasonably large lanyard hole, so you can put a lanyard and a bead and whatever you want on it. If we turn it over, we will see that it is the Reeves integral lock, or the frame lock. It's a fairly crude frame lock. You've got a very deep relief cut on the outside, which I never get. and it's, it's quite chunky. You've got these sort of drilled corners to make sure there are no stress points at those points. Now, not sure that there's a. I think it's just a carburized tip to the titanium frame lock. I don't see an insert or an over travel stop. Now, there's quite a bit of writing on this knife in a way. You've got the Schleich logo there, but you also have here Taichung, Taiwan, and I've always said, that the best Spyderco knives tend to be the ones made in Taichung. In fact, the best of pretty much anybody's knives, if they're made in Taichung, they're going to be good. That being said, I reviewed the Spidey Chef earlier this year, and the one that we had a very, very dodgy lock. You could just press on the back of the blade and the lock would undo. And this one is perfectly solid. It's not mine, so I'm not going to hammer on it, but at the same time, it's absolutely, definitely solid. You got a bit of jimping on the back here, and then you have, and I think this is a change to the original Techno. It's a completely open back. You just these two standoffs in sort of acid green. I know it sort of, I suppose, adds a pop of colour, but I never quite get that. But there we are. Now, as I say, we're a reversible wire clip, but like I say, because of the way this is set up, by the way, if you hear thumping running up and down the corridor behind me, or somebody shouting, that is my granddaughter that's padding up and down the hall, and my wife that's shouting for us to keep quiet because I'm making a video. There we go. Just what it is. This ain't the BBC. Now, yes, what I was just saying there about the reversible clip. That's fine. You've got a nice cutout there for the Spidey hole to open it, but on the other side, the lock bar goes right across the Spidey hole. Now, it does mean that this would be an ideal knife for the old Spidey flick, because you can get at the hole nicely from the back if you're left-handed, but I can't do that, so it doesn't really matter. As far as I'm concerned, the fact that you can't get into the hole there means it's a right hand. To me, it's a right-handed knife. Now, I think back in 2012, this was a bit more innovative than it might be considered today, because there are an awful lot of other knives that are sort of similar. One that I have that really looks as though it's very similar is this from Kaiser. It kind of, to my mind, it looks very similar, but actually it's really quite a different knife. You've got a sort of similar-ish blade shape and you have a similar handle shape, but this one is not a frame lock. This is it looks like a friction folder with the extended tang, but it's actually a detent folder. But it is titanium. It's got a fine bead blast to the handle, rather than this sort of coarser, sort of almost Chris Reeve style. It's not quite. But I do have a slight problem with this style of knife. I mean, I like them. I like little knives. I've always liked little knives. But if we were to, yes, if I was to bring in a couple of others, I don't know when these were actually designed, when they came to being. Oh, we have a granddaughter. Now, I don't know how these go in terms of dates. I mean, the Zonzo here at the bottom here, I know is a relatively recent design. I don't know when the Suru first came out. It seems to have been around for forever. But these are both, although they're one's by Fox and one's by MKM, it's actually by Makita. These are Jesper Vox knives. So this sort of pattern has become quite common. But what Vox usually does with his knives, which has become sort of standard, although I notice he's done a few lately that don't have this. You tend to have that forward finger trial, which means that although this is a tiny little knife, you can get a full sort of 3.5 finger grip on it, despite the fact I have extra large hands. So he did that with the Zonzo. Oops. But he also did it with the Suru. And there's a D10 version of the Suru, which actually is quite nice. I don't generally go for D10 versions of these knives, but with that finger trial, it makes it quite solid as well. Of course, also, although Vox has a different shape to the Spidey hole, there is still that vibe going on with these knives. So this sort of become a relatively common shape. I think I probably prefer the Vox ones. I mean, you can get this in Slappy Titanium, or you can get it in micarta, or you can get it in FRN. I actually think the FRN version is my favourite. There was also a UK legal version of that Heine Haynes did, which I really didn't like at all. I thought it was horrible. Just ruined what was a good knife. But then there are other knives around today which also take up this similar vibe. And it's becoming a fairly common thing. For example, we have the QSP Penguin, which is a lovely little knife. Now this is the baby version of the Penguin. They do larger versions, but we're looking at small little pocket little knives that will do everything you need to do, but are small and pocketable and non-threatening. This works well. One thing I would say is though that this and the Zonzo are much lighter than this. I mean, this feels like you've got a chunk in your pocket, because the slabs of titanium are quite thick, and I don't think there's any weight relieving going on in there. I think they're just... Now, that's a double-edged thing. It means it feels like you've got a substantial knife in your pocket, but also it means that you've got a substantial knife in your pocket. I don't know whether that's good or bad. Another one that's just come out of late, which I just reviewed a couple of weeks ago, is this. Now again, we've got a similar scale of knife, and we have a similar price of knife, because this one is still available at the moment. I think it's what do we got? 289 pounds, which I think is quite a lot. This is 229, I think. So again, this is pretty expensive, but it's not as expensive as that. Now, granted, this is aluminium, and this is titanium. This is CPM M4. This is XHP. So, you know, that in some ways they're not comparable. In fact, in many ways they're not comparable, but in one way they are, and that is that they are small, compact, drop in your pocket knives that will do most of what you want during a day without upsetting anybody, without threatening anybody, and so forth. And that is, you know, that is a category of knife these days. You know, whether it be the sort of the Penguin or whether it be the Isonzo. In titanium, this is still a relatively cheap knife. I don't know what they do this one in, but I think this would still be the cheapest of the three. Even with, it would then have M390 and titanium. Now, how does that measure up against M4? Don't know. I actually like the aluminium, and it might seem an odd thing, you know, premium titanium versus budget aluminium, but I actually like the aluminium because it's light. And if you're going to have a small knife like this in your pocket, I don't see why you'd want it to weigh like a boat anchor. I mean, okay, it's not that heavy, but when they're this small, I suppose in many ways it doesn't matter. But, you know, these are fairly substantial bits to put in your pocket. This is, you know, lightweight. So I know this gets a lot of stick for its price, and I think part of that is just because it is light and small. It doesn't mean it's not good, because it's really good. But sometimes with these, you look at them and you think you're getting something for your money because it's heavy, but it doesn't cost any more to make a knife that's heavier. There's a little bit of extra cost in the materials, but most of the time it's in the machining and so forth. And there's, you know, as much in one as there is in the other. Okay, this blade's a little bit more complicated. This one's a pure flat grind, but there's more work in the handle on this one. This is properly ambidextrous as well, which for me is a big thing. Oh, and as somebody pointed out, actually, the logo on this pivot seems to be appropriate because it looks like a coronavirus, which, if you can see that, yeah, looks like coronavirus, which is kind of interesting. It's called the immunity, so that may be, I don't know this, but I suspect that may be why it has a virus for a pivot, or it may just be coincidence, but I suspect that's one of those little secrets that was sort of put in there. Yeah, anyway, I like that knife, but that's not what we're talking about today. This is the one we're talking about. This is a nice knife, but my only downsides to it are, one, without a forward finger choil, you've got quite a short handle, and I think if it was mine, I'd be putting a lanyard on it just to give it that extra bit of a grip at the end, just as I have done with all of these. You know, they've got different types of lanyard on them, but they've all got something, except the Kaiser, which hasn't got anything, but mainly because it doesn't have a lanyard hole. You'd have to put your lanyard around one of the posts. One of the posts at the back there, and then hope it didn't rub on the blade. I think that's a bit of I think a small knife like that really should have a lanyard hole, because most people are going to find that knife could do with a bit of extension to the handle, which the lanyard certainly gives it. I mean, this one was a bit over the top, but I was just playing with a bit of cord, and then I'd made that lanyard, and I just thought I'd put it on there just for a laugh. But as I say, the Benchmade actually comes with a lanyard with a little bead on it. I don't know if it's aluminium or titanium. But it's a nice little lanyard. It's nicer than a Chris Reeves one, but I'm not sure I'm wild about it. Anyway, I'd probably put a lanyard on this one just because I'd like the extra bit of length to the handle. But it does feel nice. Certainly feels dependable. You never think this is, small, but you don't think it's going to break. This is going to work hard for you. I'm not in love with it like I am with some of the knives we've had in this series, but I think it's a perfectly good little knife. Quite expensive, of course, but it's made in Taichung, so it's probably going to be well made. I think that's about all there is to say about it. If you like the stuff, please give it a thumbs up or give it a thumbs down. Doesn't really matter. It all helps the algorithm. A comment would be good. And please subscribe if you haven't already, because there's more stuff coming up. 2 more knives in this set, and then these will be going back before Christmas, and we'll see where we go from there. Thank you very much. Bye.